Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopijana Vallabha
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki jai. Jai Shri Rupa Shri Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dasa Gunas Prabhu's ki jai. Jai Shri Shri Gondi Jai. Jai Shri Shri Radha Govardhana Dari Jai Shri Krishna Balaram Jai Giri Govardhana ki jai. Vrinda Devi Tulsi Devi Maharani ki jai. Sri Caitanya Caritamrita ki jai. Gaura Pamanandi Hari Hari Bo. Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome to this morning's Sri Caitanya Caritamrita class. We are going to be reading from the Adi Leela. Last chapter, the Adi Leela, chapter 17. This chapter is entitled Pastimes of the Lord in His Youth. We're on text 104 today. Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktavinda Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktavinda Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktavinda. You can do that for the whole class, can you? Don't need to do anything else. We're on text 104. You have to bear with my eyes. Ke achila mami puva janme kaha gani Gani te lagila sava gyam prabhu vakya shuni Ke achila mami puva janme kaha gani Ganite lagila savakya prabhu vakya shuni Ke achila mami purva janme kaha gani Ganite lagila savakya prabhu vakya shuni Somebody else please Achilum mami puva jamika Ganite lagila sabagya prabhu vakashuni Keachilam Mami Puva Jamika Gani. Gani Tela Gila Savega Vakashuni. Keachilam Mami Puva Jamika Gani. Ganite Lagila Savega Vakashuni. Yachilam Amiku Vajamigani. Just going to read off my phone if you don't mind, because my eyes are not what they used to be. Word for word. Ke achilam ami. Who I was. Purva. Purva jamne. In my previous birth. Kaha. Please say. Gani. By your astrological calculation. Ganite, to calculate. Lagila, begun. Savagya, a man who knows past, present and future. Prabhu, Prabhu Vakya. The words of Lord Caitanya. Shuni, hearing. This is translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. This is Lord Chaitanya speaking. Please tell me who I was in my previous birth, the Lord said. Please tell me by your astrological computations. Hearing the words of the Lord, the astrologer immediately began to calculate. So we heard yesterday this Brahmin astrologer is going door to door. And he just knocked on the Lord's door near my pundit's house, and now the Lord is inquiring from him. Repeat after me. Please tell me who I was in my previous birth. The Lord said. Please tell me by your astrological computations. Hearing the words of the Lord, the astrologer immediately began to calculate. Purport. Through astrology, one can know past, present and future. But modern Western astrologers have no knowledge of the past or future, nor can they perfectly say anything about the present. Herein we find, however, that after hearing Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's order, the astrologer immediately began his calculations. This was not a facade. He actually knew how to ascertain one's past life through astrology. A still existing treatise called the Bhrigu Samhita describes a system by which anyone can immediately get information about what he was in the past and what he is going to be in the future. The Brahmanas who went door to door as if beggars had perfect command of such vast knowledge. Thus the highest knowledge was easily available even to the poorest man in society. The poorest man could inquire from an astrologer about his past, present and future, with no need for business agreements or exorbitant payments. The Brahmana would give him all the benefit of his knowledge without asking remuneration, and the poor man, in return, would offer a handful of rice or anything he had in his possession to satisfy the Brahmana. In a perfect human society, perfect knowledge in any science, medical, astrological, ecclesiastical, and so on, is available even to the poorest man, with no anxiety over payment. In the present day, however, no one can get justice, medical treatment, astrological help, or ecclesiastical enlightenment without money. And since people are generally poor, they are bereft of the benefits of these great sciences. Translation again. Please tell me who I was in my previous birth, the Lord said. Please tell me by your astrological computations. Hearing the words of the Lord, the astrologer immediately began to calculate. Oma Gyanati Mirandasya, Ganam Ganam Sarakaya, Sakshus Unmilitam Jena, Tasmae Shri Guruve Namaha, Angalagayate Shailim Mukam Avatarit Shurtim, Takripataham Bande, Krishna Chaitanyam Ishvaram. So, very, very wonderful pastimes of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. So this astrologer is coming through. He was quite astonished by the question of the Lord. The Lord actually was in a bit of a joking mood. Just asked him. This was a custom in those days that people would seek advice from astrologers. I think it still goes on these days to some degree, but astrology has become a bit lost in the art. It's a Vedic science. It goes back to the very beginning of time. And through the calculations and observation of the planets and stars, an expert calculator can actually, as I said in this purport, can know your past, present and future. And as we'll read on, this astrologer is very, very expert because even through this process you can actually ascertain the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he was able to do the chart, and he was astonished because he saw this, because the planets were perfectly aligned at the moment Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, some time before this pastime. Perfect, because the planets, the demigods, the reason they know all your past, present and future, because they're part of the supreme arrangement. They collect the data, you could say. They're the ones that create all the reactions, both physically and mentally. They're the ones that send the tsunamis that destroy 10 houses on one street and save one on another. That's all arrangements of karma by higher beings. So the demigods are also part of this, and they're planetary controllers. So by being able to observe all the planets and calculate very carefully, then you can ascertain these things. But they're material facts. Prabhupada says it's a material science. Srila Tamal Krishna Maharaj asked Srila Prabhupada, what about astrology and Krishna consciousness? And Srila Prabhupada told him it's a science. It's a material science. And it has nothing to do with Krishna consciousness. So it's not something that devotees strive after that much. Is the very famous and great spiritual master Srila Prabhupada in his earlier life, when he was Bimal Bashad Dutt, he was also very expert astrology. He did a very extraordinary Bengali translation of the Surya Siddhanta. He became very, very famous for that. He was a great, Prabhupada called him a professor of astronomy and mathematics. He was so expert at these sciences. But even himself, and he was given the name Siddhanta Saraswati because of this work he did. Later, when he took sannyas, he became Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj. But even Prabhupada mentions, even my spiritual master, he said he gave this up later on. It's not something he pursued, even though he was so expert at this science. So, yes, so Prabhupada wanted us more to rely on Krishna than the planets, because these are material considerations that to do with our karma. And the karma, it's part of the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, and it's there for people that want to stay in this world. They want to know who I was, what I'm going to be, what's going to happen. You know, they're very excited about being in this world and their future. And it's pretty much you become self-absorbed in your own destiny, rather than the business of the human form of life, which is to become Krishna conscious, God realised, and actually get right out of this material world. Devotees don't want to stay here unless the Lord desires, but by nature, the living entities don't belong in this world. So there's no point in getting overly caught up in these things. So Srila Prabhupada didn't put a lot of emphasis on astrology for devotees. even though it's quite customary, especially in Vedic culture. At the time of birth, you would do a chart, and that would help the parents sort of direct the child's education and life. And for marriages, you would try and match couples up, especially according to Varna. It was not very auspicious for different Varnas to mix, especially a Brahmana and a Sudrani, and vice versa. And so sometimes you would get insight into this material science to arrange your life in an orderly way. But that's about the extent of it. It's not, like I say, Prabhupada said, it's not spiritual. It has nothing to do with Krishna consciousness. There was a man in South India that approached Srila Prabhupada. He wanted Prabhupada to read his palm. And he kept pushing Prabhupada to read his palm, And eventually Prabhupada grabbed his hand and took a look at it, and a good look at it. And he said, slapped it. All bad, birth, death, old age and disease. So this is the reality. So there's no point. At the end of the day, astrology is not going to save you at the time of death. And Prabhupada's that's quoting Prabhupada. It will not save you at the time of death. So, and then there's another, especially for practicing devotees, anybody that's come to Krishna consciousness, there's another factor, very important factor, which is called Krishna karma. You ever heard that term? Krishna karma? How's your karma? Krishna karma. It's some, if you want to remember these 3 verses, I'm going to quickly tell you what they are in the Bhagavatam. 6th canto, 2nd chapter. I'll repeat it after. The last verse is 2nd chapter, 6th canto, text 49. Srila Prabhupada gives this wonderful purport in there, and then he gives what he calls added footage or notes by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, which explains what happens when somebody chants holy names. This is all in relation to the pastime of Ajamil. Once you chant Hare Krishna, then actually your karma is sort of dissolved. So then you're going to say, well, what about my astrology? Well, it's been tampered with at this point in time. So you've got to be careful. If you want to go by your astrology and remain in this material world, do not chant Hare Krishna. Because once you do that, it's all over. It's explained the byproduct, and it's important to understand it's a byproduct of chanting Hare Krishna is liberation, whilst other transcendentalists like Brahmavadis, that's their goal. But it's very easily attained for devotees. So what's liberation mean? It means a lot of different things at different times, but in relation to Ajamil, he's a great example. He was a very, very sinful personality. He gave up his higher education, his Brahminical upbringing. He was quite a pious person at the time. He became an influence of prostitute. He was out doing his daily chores, and he saw a prostitute and a man embrace. He became captivated. That image entered his mind and then his heart, and then eventually ended up approaching that prostitute, and they end up getting married, and he engaged in all sorts of sinful activities for the rest of his life to support this lady, and he also gave up his own beautiful chaste wife to do that. So he became misdirected. So karmically, we could understand he's going to get some serious reactions, because karma, you have both good karma and bad karma. So he had some good karma, but he'd sort of dwindled some of that away, or it's still there in your karmic bank account, but he was accumulating massive amounts of sinful reactions. So the normal course of action is at the time of death, sinful person is taken away by the agents of Yamaraj, and according to your activities, it's all recorded. There's many, many witnesses. As you can't hide from the higher beings, and what to speak of Krishna sitting within your heart. Everything is witnessed and recorded, and then proper reactions administered, and they're there to help you to become a bit sort of fixed up in your next life. Those hellish impressions that you get for all those reactions, they leave that mark in your consciousness. So in your next life, you're a bit more thoughtful, a bit more hesitant to perform sinful activities. It's there on a subtle level, because the hellish reactions are given to the living entities in your subtle body. When you die, your gross body is thrown away, burned, fed to the worms, whatever we do with it. but the subtle body remains, and the soul is entrapped in that subtle body and it's carried away. And according to karma, you'll get certain reactions. So in the case of Ajamil, he had all that coming to him. But because he chanted the name of the Lord Narayan, and importantly in this purport it mentions, that I just mentioned in 2nd chapter of the 6th canto, verse 49, that Ajamil's sinful reactions, it wasn't at that moment when he chanted at the time of death that he was liberated. Actually, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that it was at the very first time he named his son, I think it was about 5 years early. His son was about 5 years old. At that very moment he became liberated. And that's explains that all these sinful activities, both past, present and future, were eradicated. Even sinful acts, because he continued to sin. But he was liberated. Now we have to be careful on this point, because it is a great offence to commit sinful activity on the strength of the holy name. We chant these 10 offences every day. But in the case of Ajamil, he wasn't chanting in that consciousness. It was offenceless chanting, because he was just calling out to his son. And it's explained that purport, as he kept calling the name of his son, Prabhupada mentions many thousands of times throughout his life, he was accumulating bhakti. He was making spiritual advance unknowingly. So then when it was time for his due reactions, he was on his deathbed, then the Yamadutas, as per norm, they turned up to drag him away. He was so scared. Can you imagine that? There's a term in medical science called terminal restlessness. Anyone heard that before? Terminal restlessness. You can look it up. It's been witnessed and documented throughout the world. It's what people go through, reactions people have just before dying. And interesting enough, it's quite the same everywhere. And we're talking about specifically with people with terrible karma, that are going to undergo severe punishment or go into a lower birth. And they're very, and this is, you can read this, they're very frightened. They see, first they hear dogs and see ferocious dogs, and they're describing the Bhagavatams as the hounds of hell. They go out ahead of the Yamadutas, and then they collect their sinful personalities and their subtle bodies, and they drag them off to the lower planets. So people undergo this fear, and they see horrible looking, scary creatures, and they said, "Get these people away from me! Get them away from me!" So this is terminal restlessness. It's been documented scientifically, but they don't know. The doctors and nurses and scientists don't know what's really going on the subtle level. The living entity is being dragged away in fear, and no one can see that. They just see old grandpa and old grandma on the bed there and sort of murmuring away, and they just say it's just part of part of death. They don't really know what's going on. And they generally, those people that have that sinful life, and normally the soul is pushed out through the anal passage. And you'll see when you read about terminal restlessness, people pass stool at the time of death. That's generally sinful people. Devotees always have their mouth open when they leave. They leave the soul. Soul leaves through the body, through the mouth. I've seen devotees dying after their death. And then we come along and we close the mouth. Usually we tie a ribbon around it to keep it closed. And then the great yogis, they can live through the top of their head, through the top chakra. But generally through the mouth for pious and transcendental people. So in the case of Ajamil, he had all that sinful reaction coming, and that's your karma. That's, as you could say, that's part of his astrology. But no, the Yamadutas immediately came. They were sent by the Lord because he'd called out to the Lord. And when you call Krishna's name out, he becomes indebted to that living entity. He takes personal interest in that living entity. And that's it. Yeah, that's liberation. No, he was no longer under the influence of his sinful karma. It was taken away by that simple, innocent chanting, unknowingly chanting the names of Krishna. So in that verse it says, what about those who consciously chant? What is going to be their destiny? But devotees are actually, their whole lives are chanting Hare Krishna. What is going to be their destiny? If it says they're going back to Godhead is guaranteed, Prabhupada says. So even though it seems sometimes a bit of a struggle or so far away, but it's actually Krishna is very close, just sitting right here. is far away and very close. So this liberation is attained. So that's why astrology is not that important, because you clap your hands in Kirtan and that changes your chart also. So all the way along we've been rearranged by the Lord, and explains in that next verse, which is 10th canto, 14th chapter, the Praise of Lord Brahma, very famous verse, verse 8. Anyone know it? It's very famous. I mean, Prabhupada quoted this verse very often and referred to it. But in that purport also, it mentions how Krishna takes what would have been your karma and gives you a dose of it according to what you need to bring you closer to Him. Right? It's very sweet. So your karma, what would have been your karma is adjusted. So for example, your karma is normally very, very strict. If you do 60 of one thing, you'll get 60 of that thing as a reaction, equal. And you won't get 59 or 48 or 61. 60, I'm just giving you a numerical example. 60, you get 60 reaction. In Krishna karma, your actions were 60, but you might get 120. Krishna might give you more, you might give you 10. Generally, he minimises them. We're often given the example, you might have been karmically bound to have your arm chopped off, but you might get a little paper cut as a reaction. So it can be manipulated but it's personally managed by the Lord Himself. And sometimes we fear that Krishna is too far away from us. Only the great devotees, the gopis and Prabhupada and all these great souls, they deal with Krishna, but Krishna doesn't really know us, we're too insignificant. But no, Krishna, if you chant His name, He takes personal interest in you, and then He'll help adjust and He'll give you just what you need. And the other verse is 1088.8, which is also a verse that Prabhupada quoted. And in that purport, again, Krishna karma is very carefully explained. So if you want to understand how your astrology is really working under the direction of the Lord, personal direction of the Lord, if you read those 3 verses, 6th canto, chapter 2, verse 49, you can write it. They're good to learn. But mainly the purports, a couple of them are very long purports, but you're reading very carefully and you become enlivened, because you'll see how kind Krishna is. So then what happens when you have a reaction in life, so what did you get, 6-2-49? 10-14-8. I often give these out to devotees when they want to know about it. I've sent them to you before. And 10-88-8. Yes, but read them in that order and read all the purports. 1088. It's near the end of the 10th canto. 8. Lots of 8s, auspicious. So anyway, I lost my what was I saying? Eh? That's the last thing I said. I know I said that, but before that. Anyway, so the most wonderful thing when you read these purports very carefully is you start to understand all the so-called bad things that may happen in your life, because they're under the Lord's direction and for your benefit. Then they're actually very sweet, and they're actually like Krishna's embrace, because He's bringing you closer. So devotees are never condemn, and through the example of the great devotees, we see Srila Prabhupada underwent so much hardship, and right from the very beginning, on the streets of Delhi and on the Jaladuda, and it continued, Prahlad Maharaj, if you want to talk about child abuse, I mean, what he went through was extraordinary, extraordinary. If no one would, and you couldn't get away with even a fraction of that in this world that we live in. You'd be locked away. He was, thrown under elephants and poisoned by his own father, poisoned, and what else? Thrown off cliffs, and just the Krishna protected him. And we mentioned Ambarish Maharaj a couple of days ago. Was it yesterday? We spoke about him on Friday, maybe. Yeah, same things. Completely under the protection of the Lord. This big, huge demon is plucked out of Vasamuni's hair to destroy him, and zero affection. So the devotees are under the protection of Krishna, and we don't have to worry about our karma, because it doesn't really matter, because whatever we get, it's going to be good for us, going to help us. It's not going to be, whether it's positive or negative. The materialistic person or materialistic devotees, people that go to church, and that if something terrible happens in their life, they blame God. Oh God, why are you doing this? Why? Right? If something wonderful happens in their life, they take all the credit. And wonderful, I did this, I accomplished this, I made all this money, I made all these muscles, went to the gym, So many things that we do ourselves we take credit for, and negative things we blame others or we blame God, isn't it? But devotee is the opposite. When something wonderful happens in his life, he thanks the Lord. Thank you kindly for giving me this facility, or my good health, or my bad health, whatever it may be. And anything negative happens, they accept responsibility. Due to my continuous sinful life after life, I deserve this, and I accept this. See? It's a different consciousness. So devotees don't blame God for anything. We accept His mercy in any form it comes. Prabhupada once, I remember reading this, it might have been in the BTG article, it says, a devotee, the front of Krishna is like Krishna's, it's like the good in your life, the good things that happen, seeing Krishna face to face. And the bad things are like seeing Krishna's back. And Prabhupada says, for a devotee, whether he sees Krishna's front or Krishna's back, he's happy to see Krishna, either way. So we're not affected by these so-called negative or positive things, good or bad in our life. Devotees remain transcendental. So this Krishna Karma verses, if you can read them, you'll get a lot out of them. And you'll see that there's no point in getting your chart done because it's been mangled up by the process of devotional service. Sometimes we read that by chanting, our karma is gradually diminished, or we give the example of the fan turning and slowly. Either way, it's a done deal. Those people on the streets that see the Rath Yatras, that see the Harinam and go, there's the Hare Krishnas, or come along and go, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. When I was a young teenager, I used to see the devotees all the time on the streets. There's the Hare Krishnas. I remember once we were having a jam with my friends, we were in a room, and we had a break, and the sax player and the guitarist went out of the room, and it was myself and the drummer left in the room, and I turned to him, I said, play the Hare Krishna beat. And he went on his cymbals, and we both went, Hare Krishna, like that. So that type of chanting liberates you, because it's actually not offensive. That's better chanting than I probably chant now, to be honest with you. So this is why we're so fortunate, because most of us came to Krishna consciousness and were able to chant. Also, my favourite band was the Mahavishnu Orchestra. So I was always going to Mahavishnu. I used to have debates at school with my friends. They go, Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones are the best. I go, no, the Mahavishnu Orchestra is the best. We used to have little arguments like this. So by Krishna's grace, we're able to hear this holy name and become purified, and then your destiny is changed, because you're now under the control and care of the Lord. He personally takes care. So you don't have to wait to go back to the spiritual world to be with Krishna. He's with us now. He's right there. He's in our hearts. He's with the devotees, and we have full access to Krishna. Because the Lord Caitanya was, I think when he was discussing with the Tattvavadis, because they were explaining their process of anashram, attaining perfection and going back to Godhead. And he said, our system is hearing and chanting, and our goal is Krishna Prem, love of God. And he said, whether we're in the material world or the spiritual world, either way, if we can attain that love of God, doesn't matter. Even though we do want to go back to Godhead, but ultimately the question can be, why would you want to go back to Godhead? Can anybody answer that? To be with Krishna. That's it. Anybody else? Why do you want to go back to Godhead? What's wrong with this place? So you want to go just to get it? You want to go there for a break? Not yourself. No. That could be correct. People want relief. Right? So anyway, so ultimately there's no point going back to the spiritual world for these sort of considerations. We go there because we're purely in love with the Lord, We want to serve Him eternally. So this process of pure love can begin in this very lifetime. There's no point holding off, because if you want to go to the spiritual world, you have to develop your love of God. You have to be fully engaged in pure devotional service 24/7. We've got to come to that stage. So this is why we're here practicing, because we want to practice so we can do what we practice here there. But if we can't practice it here, then we're not going to be able to go there, because we won't be able to function in that environment. It's an environment of pure devotional service, which I've mentioned before. So anyway, I'm not going to keep on going too much. So I'll read the verse again, which I won't be able to see. The verse is gone. The verse has disappeared. Where is it? Anybody remember the verse? Please tell me who I was in my previous birth, the Lord said. Please tell me by your astrological computations. Hearing the words of the Lord, the astrologer immediately began to calculate. It's interesting, in the next few weeks we'll hear all these verses, but he calculated he worked out that this person is actually the Supreme Personality of God. He had all the symptoms of Supreme Being. And he told the Lord sort of laughed. He said, no, your calculations aren't right. You know? And you all know what he said. The Lord said, no, my last life I was a cowherd boy. That's what he told the astrologer. Anyway, and he said, because of that, I was able to take this birth due to the pious activities of looking after cows. So the Lord's having a bit of interaction and he'll end up, all these personalities that come in contact with the Lord, they all receive the mercy of the Lord and get Krishna Prem. It's a very liberally distributing love of God. And sometimes we think it's just the Lord Chaitanya's pastime, is just something that happened in India or West Bengal, but it was a universal affair. I mean, the demigods put out the most extraordinary chart. That means all the planets all lined up. They all know what's going on. And you can actually see the chart. The chart's published in the Caritamrita in the earlier chapters, in the Caitanya Bhagavat. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta gives a commentary on it if you're into astrology. So, yeah, I mean, even the wives of the demigods described, they were there at the time of Lord Chaitanya's birth, in disguise. Prahlad Maharaj came in disguise. There was so many demigods from other planets, even from the lower planets. It said the reptile living entities, the Nagas, they came in human forms. So many living entities from all universe were aware of the personality of Godhead appearing 500 years ago. Even though it was a covered incarnation. And there was ripple effects we saw throughout Europe. There was a renaissance, a golden age for the Europeans. They came out of the dark ages. So there was even material ripple effects going on when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. So it's a great universal event, even though it happened in this little place called Navadvip, Sri Dhammayapur. But everybody benefited and was aware, and it was spread all over the universe. Lord Chaitanya spread Krishna consciousness all over the universe. Okay, I'm just filling in time now. So if anyone would like to comment, ask a question or a correction, or you've got 10 minutes. Rupa Raghunath Prabhuji. You want me to read your palm, do you? All bad. All good for your case. Jesus. All good. You know that? For every book you've distributed, it's all good. So how many books have you distributed? You've been keeping tabs?
Not really, unfortunately.
I guess after the first million you gave up.
Thanks for your class, Prabhu. There's that verse in the Bhagavatam states Saloka Sarupya Samipya Shasti Ekatva. There's different kinds of liberation. One can achieve the same form as Krishna, the same planet, same association in the spiritual world, the opulence, or merge into the oneness of Krishna. But pure devotee doesn't care for any of these. And like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, prayed, my Lord, even if you want me to take birth again in this material world, I don't mind as long as it's in the house of your devotee. So, in our neophyte condition, we might think, well, I don't care about going back to the spiritual world because I have a chance to render pure devotional service in this world, so I don't mind coming back life after life. What would you say to that sort of...
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not about us, it's about the desire of our spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada wanted us to go back to Godhead. He went to all that trouble to take us back home, you know. So that's the mission of the Lord and His devotees, you know. Then there's exceptions, there's great devotees that actually do come back and will do come down, like Srila Prabhupada and others, for the purpose of bringing us back. But ultimately the mentality of the advanced devotee that he doesn't care where he is as long as he can remember Krishna and serve Krishna and engage in devotional service, which is the spiritual world. That's spiritual consciousness. Wherever you are within this world, there's no difference. It's all Krishna's energy. So it's just that the devotee sees everything in this world as paraphernalia to be engaged in the Lord's service. So wherever he is, whether he's in the material or spiritual world, it's the same thing. But yes, Srila Prabhupada's magazine, Back Home, Back to Godhead. So that's a business of our spiritual masters and teachers. They want to grab us out of here and put us back, put our heads on Krishna's lotus feet and get on with our eternal life of pure devotional service. But if you've got to come back here, come back here for a good reason to spread Krishna consciousness. Yeah. You may come back to do more books. Who knows? But that's a benediction, isn't it? It's not a curse. Krishna Rupa. Hopefully you'll give us a comment.
Thank you. Wonderful class. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Yes, just speaking to Rupa Raghunath Prabhu's point that, you know, our duty is to go back to Godhead because we don't want our spiritual masters to have to come back down and drag us back. So, Absolutely. You know, our goal is always thinking about what our service is to the spiritual master. And the other thing I wanted to mention was that I read in Bhagavatam, I can't remember where, but I definitely read it in Bhagavatam, that in the material world, the enjoyment that we may derive and the reaction we get to that enjoyment, I'm talking about a sinful enjoyment, is actually not the same. We actually suffer much worse than the so-called enjoyment we receive from sense gratification. It's not that it's like an even playing field. You know, we may get this much enjoyment, but the suffering is that much.
Sounds like we've been ripped off here.
Yes, it's really, it's not the scales of justice are not even, it's the other way around.
Where's the refund counter? Yes, it's true, exactly true. Now these bodies are designed for suffering.
Yeah, and the other thing I was thinking of is that in Kali Yuga, at least we have that benediction that we don't earn sinful reactions to what we think. But in the Gita, it explains that there's thinking, feeling and willing. That's so right. Even though we might be thinking something, thinking, oh, okay, I'm not going to get a reaction for that, we will be forced to actually act.
If you contemplate the object of the senses, you become attached. Very good points. One more over here. Still got a few minutes.
Thank you for the class, KK. So you said the devotees kind of do the opposite, where they thank Krishna when something good happens, but when something bad happens, they just are like, I deserve this, and then accepted it. But what about like not having a taste for chanting and stuff like this? How are we meant to kind of accept that when we obviously want to be absorbed into the chanting?
So the taste in Krishna consciousness is done through practice and determination. I mean, we don't chant to get a taste, we chant to please the Lord, to follow the instructions of our spiritual master. The taste is naturally there. Krishna is very tasteful, very sweet. His holy name is very sweet. So generally, if we don't get a taste, it can be either offences or inattention, one of those things. So you have to persevere. It's not an overnight process, you know. It's not you pay your $20, you get your mantra and you're done, you know. It's, you got to understand we've been in this material world for unlimited lifetimes, for such a long time, and we've accumulated so many impressions and wants and desires which travel with us in our subtle body, so we bring that to this body. So you're wrestling with these things whilst you're trying to become Krishna conscious. But that's part of the process of Krishna consciousness. We push through the struggle, and eventually, and Krishna's watching. Krishna's watching, and he'll help us. And eventually, you'll get glimmers. I'm sure you get glimmers. Glimmers, and we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we just keep on going. And in time, you'll go beyond taste. You'll become a pure lover of God. So you won't worry about the taste. You'll be worried more about giving pleasure to the Lord. That's the end game. Does that help?
Yeah, but wouldn't being absorbed in the chanting please Krishna, because that's kind of what he wants, right? Yeah. So not being absorbed, then it's kind of like, it's not kind of for selfish reasons, if that's what, you know.
It's not, chanting is not a material activity or karmic activity. So what you're trying to say is this: why are we getting a bad result?
Yeah, like being disappointed that I can't be fully absorbed all the time in chanting.
Well, that's a good thing, that you're acknowledging that you still have to work a bit harder. You're judging yourself, you know, and it's a good thing to do. It's good at the end of the day to, when you pay your obeisances before you go to bed, is you sort of have a look at, go through your day and see what you did and didn't do or whatever. We're introspective. And if you're not getting it as difficult, then you have to, like you're doing now, you ask somebody, what am I doing wrong? Why am I getting a taste? And generally it boils down to those, when the root cause of all offences is inattention. And it's difficult because the mind wants to wander. It's been wandering for so many lifetimes, it does whatever it wants. And now in this life, you're asking your mind to shush, do as you're told. This thing just wants to go crazy. It's just used to go, so just shanti, shanti, you know, shanti, shanti. So you got to train the mind through practice. And after a while, if you keep doing, the mind will sort of, it's a little bit like training bullocks. They develop habits, and then after a while they'll go off in the right direction just from habit. But if you just let them do whatever they want, we know what that's like. You become out of control, even when you're training bulls. If you don't train regularly and teach them discipline, they become dangerous. So your mind will also become dangerous if you let it just wander off and do as it likes. Just what I have a simple practice. I analyse. I do this very quickly. If something comes into my mind, if it's beneficial for Krishna consciousness, then you can dwell on it. If it's not, I see it as a dead end. And I see I'm driving home, you know, trying to get back to Godhead. There's no benefit of driving down dead ends. What's the point? Especially if it's a dead end. So you've got to learn to analyse the useless thoughts and just cut them off before you even turn the corner. Because once you're down a dead end, it's a bit of a waste of time, and you've got to get out. It's just, why bother? So just stay focused. So that's practice. Practice into good association and reading Srila Prabhupada's books every single day. They're our treasure, our guide, you know, and they'll keep your mind on track. Sorry, we're going to run out of time, but one more quickly. David Goyer, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, it's Gemini who wanted to.
So we're on Prashadam time now.
Hello. It's not really a question. It's more of a statement. Thank you for the class today. Yeah, I guess when I was living, you know, in sinful activity or whatever, I noticed I'd get like sleep paralysis sometimes in modern terms, and that was basically, from my perception, astral entities attacking the subtle body, I think. But I remember on a few occasions when I'd chant the Hare Krishna mantra, it automatically just disappear straight away.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to confirm that that story with that man saying Hari or Narayana. Yeah. So just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Yeah. So you were talking about ghosts annoying you. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll just
subtle entities. Yeah. When you chant Hare Krishna, they do go away. Yeah. I've experienced them many times. Yeah.
Just wanted to confirm that. So thank you.
Did we stop, or did you want to say something, David or Harry? Okay, just speak fast.
Just quickly, it just occurred to me when you were saying that about getting a taste, when you were saying about that, if we try to get a taste, the taste we're trying to get is the same taste we've had for millions of lives. because that's all we know is a material or subtle taste. But Krishna said it's a higher taste. So if we just chant trying to please Krishna, we'll actually get a taste that's like, wow, I've never tasted that. That's actually a higher taste. So we shouldn't try to get a taste because that's the same material, subtle taste that we've always had.
That's a good
But we'll
point,
get a much
thank you.
higher taste.
I think we should taste Prashadam now. Is that right? So did you got that? You heard what he said? Yes, that's an important point. Thank you, Prabhu. Jai Ma Prashadam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sri Caitanya Caritamrita ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol.